Hello, I'm David Chaston with 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz. This is where you get everything you need to know in 90 seconds at 9 o'clock, with news of more difficult sustaining Chinese growth. But first, in New York, the IMF boss has raised the problem for small island nations where large Western banks pull back on correspondent services because of new regulation and AML risks. She says it is imposing costs and severe restrictions on communities that just can't afford them. In China, house price rises in June slowed for a second straight month. This is adding to fears that a construction-led rebound in the economy may not be sustainable. And new reports suggest they may be getting ready for a new bout of deficit spending, taking the central government deficit spending target from 3% of GDP to 5%. China's growing dysfunction matters for us through our interdependence. Deloitte said overnight that the impact on Australia is growing. You can see the continuing income squeeze evident in falling profits, weak wages, and a federal budget still deeply in the red. Hopefully the worst of that weakness on national income will now have passed, although much of it remains dependent on China. Unhappily, much also dependent on Australia's dysfunctional politics, they said. And in a new report, a research group has calculated that the world's largest 20 banks spent almost $500 billion over the past 5 years to the end of 2015 on what it terms conduct costs. These are fines and related costs from bad or illegal banking practices. The top 3 banks were all American, 13 of them were European, and National Australia Bank, that's BNZ's parent, was the only local institution to appear in this dishonourable list. And one of the fears anti-TPPA activists banged on about was the ability for large multinationals to challenge countries' policy changes in court. And the power of big tobacco has been a catch-cry for them. But it hasn't turned out that way. Philip Morris has lost in court trying to protect its brand, and more legal losses are likely for them in Australia and New Zealand. Trade agreements seem to protect sovereign policy making quite well. And tomorrow morning we get another dairy auction. Over the past week we've been seeing hints of softer prices on the futures market, but overnight that turned around somewhat with stronger price indications for whole milk powder. Back in New York, US Treasury 10-year yields rose today and are at 1.6%. US benchmark oil price is lower and just over $45 a barrel, and the Brent benchmark is just over $47 a barrel. The gold price is virtually unchanged at $1,328 an ounce. New Zealand dollar is also virtually unchanged at 71.1 US cents, 93.6 Aussie cents, and at 64.2 euro cents. The TWI is at 74.8. I'm David Chaston. That was 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz.